They are approaching $2 million in prop firm payouts. No small numbers by any feat.
When I started with props, I was just thinking about, oh my God, I can make $20,000, $30,000, risking $2,000. I wasn't even thinking about risk. I'm averaging 100K in payouts right now for the past 5 months.
A lot of prop traders don't blow accounts because of risk. They blow them because of expectations. That's the belief of today's guest, Trader Yush. He's closing in on $2 million in prop firm payouts, with half of that being done in 2025 alone.
No matter what you do in trading, like trade your personal money or props, if you don't have rules, you might get payouts, but you might give all that money that you made in payouts right back. Another rule that I have is only spending X amount in prop firm fees. So I try to keep my spending between like 5, 6.
What is one rule that has saved you the most money?
What I would say,
he actually started 2026 making $300,000 of just a $5,000 spend. What stands out in today's day and age is he's done it with public receipts. Full transparency is something that he really prides himself on.
I trade one firm at a time, and I focus on 1 or 2 prop firm for the day. I just set a risk parameters for that prop firm based on how much buffer I have. There is a huge thing going on social media for I think almost 2 years now, where a lot of people copy trade like 5, 6 prop firms together. It's great when it works. What happens when it doesn't work? You lose money on all those accounts. Me personally, if I see that, I'm like, oh no.
He actually shifted away from ICT concepts to focus on order flow. By the end of this episode, you're going to understand why managing your expectations and not necessarily risk might be the real key to staying funded in the long run.
If I have a red day with a particular prop firm, I don't trade that prop for a week.
Interesting.
My mindset, the way I think about it is,
I want to kick off. I want to get straight into it, if you don't mind.
Okay, of course. Let's do it.
I have something noted down, which is something that I believe you tweeted maybe not too long ago. And you said, most prop traders don't fail from risk. They fail from expectations. Why are so many people falling into this trap?
It's because like the persona you see online of the traders that have been in the game, that have been trading props for, I would say, like more than 1 year. They've been through like the trials and tribulations of, learning how to trade props with the drawdowns they provide. But then you just see the success. So when you're new to props, you just look at, okay, I can spend $50 and make like $5,000. That's crazy return on your investment. They're great opportunities, but there's a learning curve that you have to go through with. You shouldn't use all the leverage that they provide you. It's like I call it a trap, right? So for a 50K account, for example, you can do 5 minis or 50 micros, and they give you 2K drawdown. If you put that on a live account and you try that, I bet you like on NQ, you'd get liquidated within like minutes. So you need to learn like, okay, you got X amount of drawdown for 50K, 2K, like $2,000 of max drawdown. You have to learn to trade small first. And once you build a buffer, that's when you can really scale the account. And that's a lot of people come in with expectation, back to what you're saying was, I'm going to make money really quickly. That's not how props are designed. And honestly, like how I've been able to find success is when I start an account, I start with micros. And then once I build a good buffer, once I get over the trailing, and then I just size, like for every 1,000, I add 1 contract. So I have like this rule that I follow. And if it's a A+ setup, which doesn't happen every day, that's when I will size like, I guess, not over leverage, just risk like 20%.
I like this because it's actually a very mechanical process in terms of how you manage this, which I think is something that not a lot of people do. They manage a lot of risk based on how they feel or how they think that they're feeling during the day, and that's what tends to set them off on a wrong path.
So when I first started trading, I read this book, Trading in the Zones, and it talks about setting rules for yourself. And I was like, nah, I'm not gonna. No. I would just trade when I first started. I would just come in the day and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna trade like based on whatever, right? But for the past few years, what's really helped me is setting rules for myself, not in just props, but trading. Like, okay, I'm only going to take max 2-3 trades. So right now I average 2-3 trades in a day. And that, knowing that and saying that if I don't overtrade, I'm just waiting for that setup. And if I just wait, I'm getting a high probability setup, part of my system, and I'm done like within the first few hours. Instead of like me overtrading, not having a plan before the trade. It just leads me to overtrade, and with props, it's so easy to overtrade.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you. You got to have a point like in your rules, like I mentioned, where you're like, okay, I'm only going to trade X amount of time, like a time frame, like a certain session, X amount of trades, and then X amount of losing trades. So for me, what keeps me from blowing accounts is I know my stopping point. It's in my rules, and I follow it no matter what. Like if I have 2-3 losing trades, I'm done. It's usually my DLL, like my personal DLL. That's just how I've sized on my trades.
Yeah.
Where if I have like 2-3 losing trades, I'm forced to stop in a way.
Got you. There's a quote, and I can't remember if it came from Trading in the Zone, but it definitely applies to everything that's written inside that book. And it's this whole paradox for traders where we trade for freedom, but in order to have that freedom, we have to instill rules.
Yeah.
And so it creates this real mindset shift, which most people struggle to overcome, but something that you've really embraced.
That's the thing about trading. There's no rules. Like with everything we do in life, there's rules. Like there's like boundaries, right? With trading, you had to create your own boundaries, and it's just trials and errors. Like I said, like, well, what rules fit you the best? But if you don't have rules, you're designed to fail in a way.
Yeah. I like the way you put that. So on the topic of rules, talk to me about, firstly, the reason why you started to create them. Did you feel like you were falling into a lot of these traps and mistakes that most traders are probably making now?
Right. So what I've early on, so I learned trading my personal capital. So I started in options. Props, when I started, there was only like 2 options. So I was very early in the futures prop space. But what I started to realize is I would have winning days, right? Like I would go on streaks of, I don't know, a week or 2. And then there would be one day where I would have a red trade and I would just keep trading. And that one day I would be giving back like a week, or that whole like 2-week stretch where I'm just, my account balance just like goes up. Yep. And then one day it's like, it's gone.
Yeah.
So seeing that like happening, it happened multiple times. I'm like, okay, I'm doing something wrong here. I have to create rules to prevent this from happening. And just like in a stock chart, right? If you're looking at a trend, like a bullish trend, it doesn't go in a straight line. Like in any equity name, there's pullbacks. So that red day, that loss is just a pullback. But how do you make it just a pullback, not just a freaking start of a downtrend, like a spiral down, right? So that's when, those type of things, like I'm like, okay, let's think about it like the equity, like your account equity balance as a stock chart. How do we prevent these from just being a pullback to go to new highs?
Yeah, I like that.
That's how I kind of think of it, right? And that's the way I mean, trading in a way, it's a game. In my perspective, it's like, but the edge is what gives you the higher probability of success.
Right.
And then setting the rules, the mental game, is the second part. And I think that is bigger. And there's something else I say on Twitter so frequently is the mental side of trading is, I would say, 80% of trading. Because if you can trade any strategy, in my opinion, and as long as you have, it depends on your strategy, like, okay, the win rate, the RR factor. But if your mental is not right, no matter what strategy you use, you're not going to be successful.
100%. 100%. I think people often overlook that. And I mean, I've been guilty of this in the past. The reason I got into coaching traders as a performance coach was purely because mindset was my biggest battle as well.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is, in today's day and age, I don't know if this is a narrative from social media. I don't know if this is people just coming in with completely the wrong expectations and not doing their own homework. But I think most people are stuck in this idea that all of the answers I need are on the charts. And if I simply spend more time doing this, and if I'm more active, I will be able to find the answers that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And eventually it all seems to end the same way. Exactly what you've said, exactly the experience that I've been through, is you start to realize that once you get past the point of having some kind of rules or plan that gets you in and out of the market, the rest of the game is really mental.
Exactly.
It's your ability to be able to juggle and manage that on a day-to-day basis to find and get the outcomes that you're looking for. So what would you say has been your biggest or most difficult challenge in terms of the mental game that you had to overcome?
So look, the biggest thing was fear of losing. Because in the early stages, I've traded the same for since I started trading. I just added a few things to refine the system and make it more simple. So I'm not looking at too many things, right? That's another thing. Looking at too many things and you end up missing it, because in day trading, you have to be so quick with your decisions, or you miss the trade. Especially as a scalper, in my personality, the way I trade, you have to be really quick with your decisions. Like, I'm saying in seconds. You got to execute in seconds. But fear of losing, like the biggest struggle was I would be in a trade and I would be looking at the P&L. One, that's a horror. Never look at the P&L. Two, it was, I don't know, just that I would get anxiety. Even though I followed the process, I'm like, okay, I've seen this play out, back testing, and I'll just but what really got me through, so that was what was the issue, the biggest issue I've had. And then what got me through was realizing, like, I can't win every trade.
Yeah.
The only thing I can manage is my risk, how much I'm going to lose in a day. So now, and what I've been doing is, before I even start trading, I know exactly what I'm risking. So my mind is already accepted. Okay, I'm trading this Prop Firm account. I'm going to risk this much on this Prop Firm account. Worst case, that's what happens. I've accepted it. I'm not coming into every day thinking I'm going to win.
Okay, let's take a quick break here, and I want to tell you about a prop firm that's actually trusted and proven to pay their traders. There's only one name you need to know about. It's TraderFi. You see, TraderFi Futures is one of the most trusted names in the industry. They've had consistent and stable operations over the last few years, and they've paid out over $125 million to traders. The best part about doing business with them is there's no hidden rules. There's no denied payouts. As long as you hit your objectives, you get paid. It's pretty simple. Now, here's what TraderFi gives you that actually matters as a trader. They've got flexible plans in place that you can get paid out daily. You've got the ability to pass evaluations in just a single day. And if you don't even want to mess around with evaluations, they've got instant funding plans as well. Honestly speaking, their dashboard is one of the best in the game. They've got an inbuilt journaling process that allows you to trade, track, and improve your results over time. That's how real consistency is built. Now, before we get back to the episode, I want to share a massive update. TraderFi Crypto has officially launched. This is going to give you better pricing for crypto-funded accounts. And you're also trading with institutional liquidity from exchanges like Binance, OKX, and Bybit. This is honestly giving you the best trading conditions possible. On top of that, the payout setup is simple. On-demand payouts. If you hit your objectives, you get paid. It's as simple as that. I personally think regardless of whether you trade futures or crypto, TraderFi is the move to make. Now make sure you use the code PFT at checkout to make sure that you get the best deal available. Links in the description below. And I think that's a big difference for a lot of traders, because I think most, at least struggling or aspiring traders that I'll speak to, they actually come in with the opposite mindset. They come in expecting every day that they're going to win. No. And that's what sets them up on the wrong path.
In this run that I've been on, I'm not really looking to make payouts. I'm just trading my system. And so I started posting like every day, like I guess I treat my X page like my journal. Like I post whatever, like however I do, what accounts I trade, prop firm accounts I trade. And then a lot of people were interested about how I'm trading, like actual trading strategy. So I'm like, okay, when I started this, I'm like, all right, this could be like something to keep me public, like public accountability. Right. And then it's turned into like people are interested in the strategy now. So I created a Discord where I show people exactly how I trade, like live streams. I'm live executing. I'm in. And then when I'm not live streaming, I have a commentary channel. But okay, there's big trade, like big sell orders here. You're seeing absorption, order flow pattern. And I'm like, okay, this is a point of interest. I'm saying what I'm risking and stuff. Right. And people are like, oh my God. But the goal is never like making like payouts. When I go into trade, it's like, I'm not going to try to make 300 for a flip day, for example, for a payout. It's like whatever I see, I'm going to take, right? It's just, and that's so common in just prop firm trading. It's like people don't think about losing. So that also leads to overspending, because they're already they're buying an account and they're already thinking, I'm going to make this much money. But they're not looking at how hard it is to actually get to the payout, the stats. Like if you look at a stat, any prop, like the amount of traders they have, I bet you it's like less than 5% make it to a payout, right? So obviously there's a large sample size there, right? But 5%.
100%. I want to backtrack for a second because there's something that you mentioned not too long ago, which really stood out for me.
Okay.
And it was, you mentioned that your biggest issue or at least at the beginning, was you had this fear of losing.
Yeah.
Right? Did you find that the fear of loss was an attachment to money or being wrong? Because I find that these are two very different things and you fix them in very different ways.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know which one you were more attached to.
It was being wrong. I just, it was more so, well, I think it's a mixture of both, honestly, because I was fixated to the P&L,
Yeah.
right? And that, again, fear of losing the money as well, but also being wrong, be like, okay, I feel like early on, I wasn't under expectation I'm going to be winning a lot, like almost every trade, which is just not possible. There's too much uncertainty in the markets and we don't have, us retail traders, we don't have the money to control that, right? So it was, I would say it's a mixture of both for sure.
And what do you think actually got you over that? Like, was there a specific moment in time? Was there a situation? Was it a mindset shift that you made? Like, how did you actually start to create that detachment away?
Right. So it was really just accepting I'm not going to win every trade.
Okay.
And really factoring in, okay, I'm going to, like I spoke about, coming into the day, being like, worst case, I'm going to lose this much. So then I would risk based on how much I set myself. I'm like, okay, worst case, I'm going to lose like 500. So if I'm only going to risk 500 today, I'm going to trade micros, like less than 5 micros. So basing it off like that, it really helped. Because first you set like the max loss, the risk management, and then you base your sizing off that.
Got you. So once you get clear on exactly what you're really fearful of, then actually fixing the problem becomes quite logical, because then you can work backwards. You can start your day by saying, this is how much I'm willing to lose and comfortable in doing so. And then you can position size accordingly. So I think that's definitely a big takeaway for a lot of people, because again, I think a lot of people think about it from the opposite narrative, which is I want to make X amount. And to do that, I need to risk this amount to make that 1 to 2, 1 to 3 worth it for what I want to make.
And that was me early on too. When I started with props, I was just thinking about, oh my God, I can make $20,000-$30,000 risking $2,000.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about risk, how hard it is to actually do it. But you gotta at the time, it was just Apex. That was the only prop firm in the space when I started with props. And they have like the harder trailing where it trails you live, like your live P&L. Didn't even care about that. I'm like, oh my God, you can have 20 accounts. You can make a 20, 30K payout. That's crazy.
I mean, it's definitely a trap, right? I think a lot of being able to do well in the prop firm space is really understanding how to play the game well.
Yeah.
And one thing that we started off today's conversation on, and I really want to dive into, and I know it's something that you mentioned, I think before we started shooting, that you were quite keen on, is this idea of longevity, right? One thing that I see often from traders in the prop space specifically is they are very used to this idea of being able to hit reset, starting all over again.
Yeah.
And it's just become a very cheap and affordable thing to do. Now, as you'll know, as I'm sure many people watching will know, outside of the prop space, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Personal accounts, investor capital, whichever route that people are aspiring to go down, that option is not a real thing. So actually what you're prioritizing here and the message that you send across to a lot of people about longevity is actually a skill that I think most people need to hone.
Yeah.
Was this something that, again, you were naturally quite good at in coming into trading, or is it something that you had to learn the hard way?
Well, before props, again, I was doing personal accounts. I traded options personal account, and then I also did futures personal account. So I went through losing large bits of money learning. I call it market tuition.
Nice.
Learning how to trade. And with props, it's so easy to just churn accounts like constantly. You can just reset. It's $100. Keep going. But what people don't realize is you're just creating bad habits doing that. And those bad habits that you do trying to pass evaluation quickly, they transfer over into the funded account.
Yeah.
100%. And many don't realize that. Many people are like, I just want to be funded so quickly so I can start making money.
Well, this is, I think it goes back to what you said at the very beginning about expectations, which is, I think most people fool themselves into thinking the moment they get funded, life will change.
Yeah.
It'll be private jets and, fancy watches.
No,
It doesn't
none of
work that
no,
way.
no.
I always try and check a lot of people and say, look, the goal is not to get funded. The goal is to become consistently profitable.
Yeah.
It's to execute your edge. As long as you do that, making money, getting funded, getting your payouts, they all just become a healthy byproduct of what you do. But you have to have the right mental model to begin with. And I think that's a part that most people miss. So specifically when it comes to longevity, how do you approach the market or prop firms in a specific way that prioritizes that, whether it's in terms of your expectations going in, whether it's in terms of your risk management, whether it's in terms of how you actually trade? What does that look like for you?
Well, first thing, I don't copy trade. There's a big copy trade across firms. There is a huge thing going on social media for I think almost 2 years now, where a lot of people copy trade like 5-6 prop firms together. And for me, when I look at that, I'm looking at traders doing that, and I'm like, okay, cool. It's great when it works, but again, one of the things what happens when it doesn't work?
Yeah.
The habits that you form. So it's like you lose all your capital, or that loss, you lose money on all those accounts. How is it going to make you feel? Psychology. Is it going to make you go on tilt? Me personally, if I see that, I'm like, oh no. Like you're going back and you're on the back in the eval. It's a stressful process, right? So I don't copy trade across firms, like copy trade firms. So I trade one firm at a time, and I don't trade every like prop firm, like different prop firm accounts in one. I focus on one or two prop firm for the day, and I just set a risk parameters for that prop firm based on how much buffer I have. And another thing I do is, so if I have a red day with a particular prop firm, I don't trade that prop for a week.
Interesting.
Because my mindset, the way I think about it is, okay, I had a red day. I'm more likely to get emotional with these accounts because I had a red day. So let me take a break from these accounts. And I can't stress the importance of breaks. I've had streaks where I've been red for a week. You need to clear your mind. People don't take breaks, and that's how they lose more money. They go back in right away, spending money on evals, and the mindset is just not there. Your trading performance is telling you, hey, slow down. You need to take a break. And if you don't want to take a break, just do one account. Don't copy trade sets of 5.
100%. I think it's such an important point, and I tend to find that we as retail traders are the worst at taking time off. We seem to think like, on average, 252 trading days in a year, I need to be trading every single one of those. It's a mentality that I think needs to stop. And actually, not that I advocate for this a lot. If people think back to what life is like in a normal 9-to-5 job, in a lot of places, you're required to have mandatory time off, right? You have to take a minimum amount of days because they understand it has an impact on performance.
Exactly.
And so I think we as retail traders, the problem is, and going back to what you touched on earlier, there's no rules, there's no boss, there's no contracts, there's no limitations. You have to be the one that's strong enough, bold enough, smart enough to get out of your own way and to understand that actually there's a limitation on how much my mind can handle. It doesn't matter how good the setup is. Maybe I need to prioritize taking that step back and, doing things in a more sustainable way.
Exactly. And a few other things I do, right? So there's certain market environments. I've been trading NQ and ES. Even when I was doing options, I was looking at ES and NQ because all the equity names I traded, like I would trade Apple options, Nvidia options. They're all heavily weighted on both the indexes. So I was still watching ES and NQ. So sometimes when they're slower and the volatility is not there, that's when I don't even trade the funded accounts. I will go in evals. Even though I have those funded accounts, I'm not, because the environment is not right to be trading them for that day or that week. So that's when I build, I guess, reserves, people call it. I was like, okay, it's like practice in a way. But back to the reason I brought that up is you mentioned not trading every day.
Right.
So I'm like risk down. I still want to be exposed to the market and learn because I'm constantly learning. Every time I'm watching the markets, at the end of the day, I'm reviewing. That's one of my rules. I have to do it. Else, I feel like if I don't review, I'm going to miss an important piece of information that I can. It's with order flow, right? I'm looking at the order book, seeing what's going on. That if there's a big seller positioned, what if it comes back, tests that? If I don't review, I might miss it the next day. So that's another important thing, reviewing what happened. Even my main session I trade is just from 9:30 to like 12. Because what's the point of staying on the computer? It's like a 9 to 5 job.
100%.
I trade for freedom, right? And to really set me and my family up for the future.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be at the desk like working like a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely fair point. The thing that you mentioned about reviewing, massive. And
So big.
I think the part that, again, a lot of traders lack is actually having the data to sit down and review it. But what does that look like for you? Do you keep a journal throughout your day? Is this something that you're doing end of day and then going through a reflection process? Like, what does that reflection look like for you?
Yeah, so I use Notion. So I just look at how I traded. That's number one. The first thing I look at is how win or loss doesn't matter. Review that and be like, okay, what did I miss? What could I have missed? And a lot of order flow I can't really backtest. So it's just like looking at it real market, noting it down so that when I'm trading real life, I actually have a journal. I'll be like, okay, this is what I see. Because sometimes what I've noticed is I have a bias. So like, okay, this is looking long. But then if you look at something for too long, that could change. It's like, if you look at chop for too long, it starts to look good.
Yeah. It's true.
So what's helped me is I have a journal, right? I'm just writing out, okay, this is chop, this is chop. So I'm just looking at it, okay, yeah, this is chop. This is not trending right now. It's just in this range, stuck in, and I'm writing out, okay, this is stuck in this range. Do not get involved in this range. So it helps me exercise patience of just waiting, right? And that's another important skill is creating a plan and just waiting. That's where that's a big part of my edge is I know that there's big buyer, seller at this level. I'm just waiting.
Yeah.
If it doesn't come back, fine. I'm watching the markets. Maybe another level develops. If it doesn't, I'm not going to trade.
Yeah. There was a really good graphic that was shared by a trader on social media. I think he had it as his banner on X. And it was basically a graphic that says, this is your plan. This is where you execute. And then everything in the middle is where you screw it up, basically. Because people just don't have that ability to sit on their hands.
You need to, that's so, again, I guess not really a rule, but what I told you what I do. I just have a journal writing like what I'm thinking in the moment. Really, not just in my head. You got to get that on a piece of paper or something, right? I just use notes to put all that information so I know. Because sometimes if you look at something for too long, it starts to look good when it's not. When it's not.
Yeah, 100%. The problem is the human mind is wired in a way that you will find whatever you're looking for.
Yeah.
If your inner belief is that I'm a trader and I need to be in the markets today, it doesn't matter what the price action is doing, you will find a way to justify a trade.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to come in with the right mindset to begin with. And again, this is going completely full circle to where we started today's conversation, which is expectations. And I actually think the better expectation for most people is to tell yourself that actually your job is not to trade today, it's to observe. Yeah. Once you've lost all logical reason to sit on the sidelines and do nothing, then you should be getting involved. Yeah. It was a lesson that I took away early into my journey. I didn't come up with this idea. I definitely wasn't smart enough to do so. But it's something that stuck with me a lot. And I think a lot of traders would benefit from the same mindset as well as that. So talk to me a little bit about OrderFlow. Because you've mentioned this a few times throughout today. It's not something that I'm familiar with in how I trade.
Yeah.
How does it give you an edge in the market? How do you use it on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So for me, how I really got into OrderFlow so I've always traded support and resistance, going back to when I started with options, and looking for momentum plays there. But the part that was always missing is, so I could draw an area or a zone, but that confirmation factor was missing. It's like, okay, when price comes back to that level, like I'm just expecting to reject. A buyer or seller doesn't have to come at that level. It's like it happened in the past. So using the past to really make the decision. No, I want to be able to see what's happening in the moment. And with OrderFlow, you can really dive in, actually see the transactions happening at that level. And with futures, all the orders come through one exchange, CME. Yeah. So all that gets aggregated into one exchange. So you can see real time what orders are taking place. And you can actually see, okay, I had this level. They're defending. There's 1,000 lots in ES, for example, hitting the bid. So that's an aggressive seller at this point. And then I'm using tools like Delta Profile that shows you absorption. So absorption is pretty much, so let's just say there's a big buy order, right? So on the orders in the offer, there's like 100, 200 lots coming in on NQ, but price is not moving. It's just stuck. So that means there is a passive seller in the market observing those orders, right? So, and market moves based on who's aggressive. If no, there's not an aggressive buyer or seller, we're just stuck in chop or balance. So once you can, in order flow, you can actually see which side is being aggressive and find a way to join the trend. Or if it's in a balanced state, you can look at where the edges of value are and see how it reacts. A lot of the times when the markets are in balance, this is where retail traders get trapped. They try to anticipate the move of a breakout. Why not just stick to what the market is telling you? The market is telling you it wants to stay in balance, trade the edges of the range. If it's trending, stay patient and wait for a pullback with a good risk reward. Why are you looking for the top? Why are you looking for the reversal? And with prop firms, I feel like you have to look for high probability setups with the limited amount of drawdown you get.
Yeah.
And if you're a reversal trader, you're going to have a lower win rate. That's just how the stats are. If you're trading actual like RR risk reward, you're going to have a lower. So how are you? I feel like as a reversal trader, like if you're doing counter trends, how are you going to manage the losses to keep them small compared to the wins when you have limited drawdown when you start out a prop account? So that is another big edge that I think, like if you just stick to what the market's telling you, if it's a balance, stick with the like trading the edges and seeing if there's trapped buyers or sellers and playing it back into the range of the opposite side of the value. Or if it's trending, wait for a pullback and get in on the pullback. That's what I kind of emphasize a lot on Twitter and Discord is we just have to be patient and see how the market develops.
You need the #1 trading tool for traders. Introducing TradeZella. It doesn't matter if you're a Forex trader, a crypto trader, an options trader, or even a futures trader. TradeZella is for everyone. To be profitable, you need to have an edge. TradeZella allows you to identify, manage, tweak, and refine your trading edge. You can connect unlimited accounts to TradeZella. It will pull all of your data onto a dashboard. It gives you in-depth analytics, and this makes journaling so easy. You can add playbooks, trade replay, full back testing, all in one single tool. By using TradeZella, you'll not only understand all of your trading data, but you'll get feedback on exactly what's working and what isn't. Use code PFT for 20% off the yearly subscription or PFT10 for 10% off the monthly. Try it out and watch your trading transform. I think there's a lot that you've shared there, and whether you know it consciously or not, I think you're demonstrating a lot of the benefit of having rules, a lot of the benefit of having, experiences that you haven't necessarily enjoyed and you've had to learn from them. And it's something that I think a lot of new traders, they really lack. And I like the idea of being able to give traders some wisdom and guidance so that they don't have to make the same mistakes that we necessarily did. Is there something that you would say to a new trader that hasn't been through those painful experiences yet, that doesn't yet have the rules in place, as to why it's so important for you to be able to do that?
Okay, so if you don't have rules, you're setting yourself up to fail. That's #1, right? And no matter what you do in trading, like trade your personal money or props, if you don't have rules, you might get payouts, but you might give all that money that you made in payouts right back. Because anyone can get a payout, in my opinion. It's about how can you do it consistently? Yeah. Over months, a year. Because it's like when you go to a casino, right? If you hit, if you hit the slots X amount of times, you're going to hit one time, just like with payouts, right? If you keep churning accounts, you're eventually going to hit. Yeah. But at the end of the day, how much did you spend to get that payout? That's the important part.
Yeah. And that's the side of social media that not a lot of people really see. Everyone focuses on the payouts. They're not understanding what went into actually making that payout.
So when I do my monthly recaps, I talk about payouts and how much I spent, because I want to be as transparent as possible. This is, if I get like 20K payout and I spend 20K, like I'm not proud of that. Yeah. Like, why am I going to try to sell that? Like, no, I'm break even. That sucks. I just wasted all that time.
True. It's become very clear that transparency online is a big part of what you do. So
it is, definitely. That's one of the reasons. Another reason I would say, other than like sharing, like having a public journal, is I was trading quietly. It was so boring, honestly. I was trading quietly the same way for years, trading props. Like I said, I was I was in early in Apex, and back then Top Step was like a 2-step program. There weren't many options around. It was just like these CFD firms dominating back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been trading I've just seen what's been going on social media, and I'm like, some of the stuff you see is not realistic.
Yeah.
It creates false image of what's out there. And my journey, I started out small. I was trading one account back. Well, when I actually learned, I made the same mistake as everyone, be like, oh my God, you can get 20 accounts. Let me buy 5, 10 accounts, not even caring about the rules. Like the consistency, I didn't even know. I'm like, okay, yeah, you can spend $500, make 10,000. That's crazy. Let me do that. But that's not how props are structured.
Yeah.
And no one really talks about how much they spend to get the payout. That's another thing. So I want to kind of emphasize that and be as transparent as possible, because not many people are doing it.
100%. I agree. And I think the space definitely needs a lot more of it, because, I mean, I've been trading for a while.
Yeah.
And the one thing I have found is the statistics for becoming profitable, I don't think they've really changed over time. If anything, they've probably gotten worse. And when I first started, I think my first hurdle was I need to find the right information. Right. Yeah. Where do I go to? Because back then there was nobody on YouTube, there was no courses, there were no social media gurus, there was none of that. So back then it was about, where do you find the right information? In today's day and age, I would actually argue, and I agree with some of our guests' take on this, is I think there's almost too much information.
Yeah.
And maybe to put it more specifically, too much misinformation.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of the wrong expectations. And that is what sets people up to fail long before they've even started, which is, never a path that you really want to go down whatsoever. So I think what you're doing is great. I think more people need to follow in those footsteps and just share the true highs and lows. Yeah. And forget the fact that, social media doesn't necessarily have to be this highlight reel of just the glamorous moments and, the ones that people generally like to share. I want to talk a little bit about payouts,
yes,
but not specifically about the amounts. Okay. Just primarily about the mindset behind them, and why I think most people are struggling with this. Because at least from a general perspective from my side, and again, please feel free to tell me if you have a different view on this, I find that most traders are either struggling to even make their first payout, and if they do, it's gone, and they never make it to the second one.
Yeah.
What is it? What do you find that most people are doing wrong in that situation that's stopping them from achieving the thing that we're trying to get across here, which is longevity in this game?
Well, I don't think many people don't think their short-term mindset is what I would say. And if I had to say one word, it's they're not leaving enough buffer in the account. That's what I see. They're just looking at a payout and they're like, oh my God, I baited. Let me take this payout. I did X amount of ROI, but they don't think about, if you take the second, third payout, that ROI grows exponentially.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where the real money is made. The second to third payout. The first payout should be like a setup where you build the buffer and you, if possible, take not the max payout. You got to set yourself to have a red day. Most people, when they take the max payout they can and they don't have a little buffer, the red day means a blow up and it starts like a tilt cycle. Because now they didn't think about that outcome. Be like, oh my God, I blew the account. I got to go to eval. So they get their credit card out, debit card out, back on that churn cycle to get funded real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big problem for a lot of people. And I like the idea of the way that you frame that. It's very business orientated, right? Thinking about it in terms of money going in versus money coming out.
Exactly.
And again, I think it's something that a lot of people need to put more emphasis and focus on.
And another thing I think about is, look, if I'm always in the mindset of how can I transfer what I'm learning here, like with prop firms, into a live environment, like not just strategy, but like the risk management settings where some props, you should enforce a personal DLL. They don't require one,
right? But
in a personal account with futures, you can get a margin call in a day if you don't have a personal DLL, right? Or lose everything you have.
Right.
It's great that props are around, but what about the future? If, let's just say, a lot of the props, I hope it doesn't happen, but a lot of them, like if some new regulation comes along and some props, there will be what if there's less options in the space, right? So, and then you're kind of forced to trade personal. But what if your strategy that you've developed is just a sim funded? It doesn't transfer to the live market strategy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of traders like that, I find.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say it here. My goal this year is to really show that part. trading not just live, like my personal account, but really no one cares about a live account at a prop firm right now. There's some good programs, but I think I want to really emphasize that. And there's certain prop firms that give you the same leverage. And there's a good argument for the traders, and I agree that some prop firms, they just take away your leverage. The whole point of prop firm is you get cheap leverage compared to you would in a personal account.
Right.
So you can pay like way less and get crazy leverage. But most don't, I guess, respect the leverage because they size in with that leverage too early.
Yeah.
But if you build a buffer and if you get good volatility day and it's part of your system and you have that buffer built, that's when you can size in. That's when the big days come. That's how my big days come because I have the buffer built and there's days where you get 200-300 point volatility or NQ. You can capture like right now as we're recording this crazy volatility. Metals are going crazy. Bitcoin is going crazy. Crypto, all the markets are moving right now, like huge ranges, and it's a great time to capitalize.
100%. There's I think what you've kind of summarized here, though, it goes back to the previous point that you made really well, which is I think most traders just lack that long-term perspective when it comes to what they do. They look at either the money in their accounts at the moment. They don't think about the second, third, fourth, fifth payout in terms of ROI. And it has a big impact on their whole psychology going forward. And again, it just sets them up on a path to not really thrive.
And I wanted to bring this up earlier. I just forgot.
Sure.
Another rule that I have is only spending X amount in prop firm fees, like for eval cost. So I try to keep my spending between like 5-6, but I'm averaging 100K in payouts right now for the past 5 months.
Nice.
So I try to keep the spend low, that ratio. And if you have that rule, then because right now, if you don't have that rule, like because we're talking about rules here, you don't know how much you're spending until because you're just in that tilt mindset and you're just like, okay, fail again, reset. You're not seeing it. You have no value in the moment of how much you're spending. But if you keep track of that, you're like, okay, whoa, I'm spending a lot. I have this limit and there's still 2 weeks to go before the end of the month. Let me slow down for today. It kind of helps you slow down. Be like, okay, today's not the day. I only have X amount of money left as part of my rules. Let me stop.
Yeah, 100%. But, and again, I think a lot of our conversation is cycling back to previous things that we have said, which is a beautiful thing, by the way. But it goes back to this idea of treating props like a business, right? There are certain times where if you were to run a business, maybe it's optimal to spend money, and certain times where it's good to scale back. It's managing a budget, right? And it's something that not a lot of people learn how to do from the get-go, right? I think, and again, an overarching message that I'm most definitely taking away from this conversation is you have to be looking at props like a business, having a plan, having a budget, understanding how to manage risk and capital on a day-to-day basis. And this is the kind of infrastructure that sets you up to succeed in the long run. Would you agree?
Yeah.
100%. All right. Awesome. Okay. Yush, I want to start winding things down a little bit. I have a couple of things that I like to do with every guest towards the very end of the show. The first one starts with a few quick-fire questions.
Okay.
Nothing crazy, nothing taxing, nothing you need to be worried about. Just literally, I got 3 questions I want to run by you. The first one, I'm actually super keen on this because we've talked about this a lot today. What is one rule that has saved you the most money?
DLL.
Nice. Okay. What's one setup you'd keep if you could only trade one?
I call it look above and fail, which is like a false breakout or false breakdown.
Nice. One reason most funded traders fail.
One reason you said, right?
One reason.
False expectations.
Nice. I like that. One that I want to add on that I think maybe you'll give some good insight to is favorite book.
Favorite book. Can I give 2? There's 2 I really like.
Go for it.
So Trading in the Zone, really good book. And The Best Losers Win.
Tom Hugard. Great book. Yeah. Both very psychology focused, but both amazing books. Love that. Okay. Last part of the show that I want to run by with you. We're doing a little bit of a segment which we're calling Confessions of a Trader.
Okay.
So at some point in the future, these are going to be real confessions that are submitted by our audience. But for now, I'm coming up with these scenarios that I want to run by each of our guests. And I want you to give me your raw insights, your thoughts, your feedback, your advice from somebody that is stuck in this specific position. Okay. So today's confession is I had a super profitable 2025. I got 800K in funding capital, and then I lost it all in December's terrible price action. I'm feeling lost right now. I don't know what to do.
Okay. So what I would say, I think definitely take like a week or two off because it will help you reset. And once you feel, I would say kind of refreshed or you're forgetting about like that dark time, I would say, get back to trading, but really start small, maybe 1 or 2 accounts, get that confidence back, and then get to funded, get a payout, and use some of the portion of that payout to buy more evals.
Nice. Practical, but very, very good advice. I like it, man. Yush, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Yep, no problem.
Awesome. All right, guys and girls, it is that time of the episode again. What were your thoughts on today? What was your biggest takeaway and what was your biggest perspective shift as a result of today's conversation? Let us know in the comments below. We're going to be reading every single message, and I want to know how this is going to impact your trading career going forward. If you'd like to participate in these shows, you've seen from the Trader Confessions, we are open to taking submissions. So check the description box below, submit your confession to us, and we will be reading it out to a future guest going forward. As always, if you've enjoyed this conversation, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out some of the other episodes on the screen in front of you. I'll see you guys in the next one.